Welcome back. You're watching Channel 1 Liverpool with me, Rifat Malik. Channel 1 Tubruk. Channel 1 Albert Dock. Time to take a look at the headlines now. It's 10 to 11, I'm Rifat Malik. 9 o'clock, I'm Rifat Malik. Christopher Older was found dead. All political campaigning has stopped. Stand head to head with those who feel it's morally indefensible. This is it, folks. My brief 2 weeks of movie show stardom has come to an end. The film director Steven Spielberg to be given an honorary knighthood.
Hello and welcome to the Muslim Viewpoint, a new video podcast series powered by American Muslim Today.
Thank you, Miss Patti Hewitt, for joining us today. My first question is, so the incumbent for your district is Republican Earl Buddy Carter. He has expressed his discontent with the current administration and the possibility of Vice President Kamala Harris possibly, being elected as president this November. He has called her out for her radical policies. What do you think, or why do you think you would be a better fit for Georgia's first congressional district?
The first congressional district is growing very quickly. It has become a real hotbed of development and business development here. What I want to make sure is that prosperity is available to all of our families across the district. We are not leaving behind any of our constituents, especially those in our rural counties. My platform is centered around working families and ensuring that working families have access to support and services they need in order for themselves to be prosperous and safe, and in order for their families to be prosperous and safe. And I think this is some of the defining differences between myself and my opponent. I believe in making sure that our working families receive what they need in order to improve their outcomes, and that they can connect to business who can then provide them with the jobs and other available opportunities available through private sector. My opponent believes in business first, and that when you have a business first policy, you are leaving many constituents behind. So I believe in our region, and I believe in making sure that our region is growing, and it's growing equitably. And that is a focus of my campaign. I think that's a big difference between myself and my opponent.
Yeah, and then I noticed, during my research that you're very passionate about helping minority communities specifically, and then our audience is a minority community, so that's of our concern. So can you kind of just tell me about your work in those communities and how you would like to continue that?
Sure. One of the things I did very early on when I came to this area, I've been living in this area almost 10 years now, is I became a board member of what was then the Minority Chamber of Commerce in Hinesville. It's now the Coastal Georgia Chamber of Commerce. But the goal of that Chamber of Commerce was to enhance and promote minority businesses and make sure that minority businesses had a seat at the table. I think that that chamber has become an important resource for small business in particular, because this is where many minorities step out into the economy, is through small business. And they perform very well. And we also have to remember that our environment is, we live in a pluralistic society now. We have regions in my area that are minority majorities, meaning that minorities are in the majorities in these areas, and that is growing. And I believe that creates strength in your policies, and that creates resiliencies in your environment. And I think that's just some of the contributions that our minorities make. But this is some of the work that's been very important to me in the community, again, is to make sure that these individuals and these families have pathways to the American dream, because that's why they're here.
Yeah, and then nationally speaking, so in March, during the primary election in Georgia, Biden was favored as the president-elect with 95% and Trump at 85%. And as you know, Georgia is a toss-up state. So how do you think voters will show up with the new Democratic candidate VP Kamala Harris as she leads Trump 3 points?
Well, I think that we can see out in our country the tremendous enthusiasm for the Harris-Walz ticket, because these are individuals that have a vision of the future and have a place, a positive and hopeful place to lead our electorate. Their policies are not built on suppression and suspicion and mistrust, but their policies are built on what America was built on, which is providing opportunity for as many as possible. And so I think that the goals and the objectives and the platform of my campaign intersect very well with theirs. And I think that that is going to improve my outcomes here and also improve the outcomes in general. I am confident that we are going to flip the seat for the Congress and that we are going to take Georgia, that the Harris-Walz ticket will take Georgia because of that message of hope and prosperity.
Many Americans are struggling to keep up with their bills due to inflation, which has been at an all-time high, 3% for the year, just now has lowered to just below that. As a possible member of Congress, do you support legislation that would protect consumers from corporate price gouging and corporate tax breaks, or even raising the minimum wage to meet the inflated economy?
You know, I think that workers, let's talk about workers for a minute, because that's a lot of what your question has to do with, have a right to have a say at the table. It doesn't mean that we are still a capitalist economic environment and we want our corporations to be profitable, but I do not believe in allowing them to be profitable on the backs of their workers. Their workers are what allows them to be profitable, and their workers should participate in a share of their bounty. And I think that's very important. And that's also true for our undocumented workers as well. Undocumented workers should not be required to work in unsafe and underpaid environments. I think undocumented workers should be recognized and protected so that they have a safer workplace, we have a more productive workplace, and as a result, corporations will ultimately make more money through greater efficiencies. So I think these are policies that make a lot of economic sense.
Yeah, thank you. And then, so AMT has extensively covered what the International Court of Justice has ruled Israel's actions as an apartheid of Palestinians. I'm sure you know many Americans have showed their support for Palestine, specifically young Americans on college campuses. So do you think the U.S. government funding Israel's military is appropriate when there has been such a national and international outcry for a solution to peace?
You know, I think that the willingness of Israel to continue to kill and hurt and keep aid from Palestinians in Gaza and elsewhere is reprehensible. And we should not allow that to continue. We should be vigorous in pushing back against any policy like that. I support the administration's stance on holding back on aid, especially on military aid to Israel, until they commit to getting meaningful ceasefire in this region, and also to allow humanitarian aid at a much larger scale.
Yeah, and then just a little follow-up. Kamala Harris has not made a firm stance for a ceasefire, America's funding to stop going to Israel. Do you think this will hurt her in the election, as, you know, many, especially young voters, feel very strongly about this issue?
You know, there are always voters that have one single issue that is the most important to them, and that's what drives their vote. I hope that younger people will see the longer view here, and the fact that what we want to do is exert longer change and more effective change on the Israeli government so that they return more to democratic values and using democratic principles to guide their policies and their positions. What I hope it does not do, and I would speak directly to young people that are listening, do not allow any of these issues to keep you out of the polls. Pull your lens back and look at the larger picture of what candidate is going to provide the type of environment that's going to be best for you on your world stage, and vote accordingly, but please vote.
Yeah, and then, so as a Muslim and minority-focused publication, the threat of harsh immigration policies, similar to the Muslim ban, is on voters' radar as we approach November elections. The rhetoric of unsafe borders is pushed when an immigrant commits a crime. However, the majority of migrants come here for a better life and to escape turmoil in their home country. What is a practical solution to fix the immigration process in a way that grants asylum for those in need while also prioritizing those already living in the States?
Well, I think that first of all, for those already living in the States, I think we need to provide pathways to citizenship or pathways to green cards, whatever these individuals might be interested in. But the point is to make them even more productive members of society, and they are very productive members of society. But we also need to make sure that we are investing in our immigration policies and our courts, that we are clearing backlogs and making sure that we have efficient ways to process people that wish to come in, and then once they come in, make sure that they have a way to be productive, meaning to work. So give them a pathway to get a driver's license, make sure that their children are in school and they're healthy. We need our immigrant workers. We do not have the workforce. Here in this area, we are looking at workforce deficits all over this region. It's 15 counties. And so we need to provide pathways for them to come in and do what they want to do, which is to create a better life for their families.
Yeah, well, I don't have any further questions for you today, Ms. Hewitt. Thank you again for your time and for meeting with us.
My pleasure.